Hey cats, it's Ed, Neil Young Bud here. With that Nike ZOOMX STREAKFLY incoming, I'm going to take a deeper dive into this shoe, where it's come from and where it's going to, and talk about if I'm excited for it. Which I am a little bit, perhaps not as much as I was. Let's fly. Welcome to the channel, friends. If it's your first time here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell below for notifications when I roll out those new videos for you. You don't want to be left out from being notified. There's nothing worse than that in life, other than finding out that there's no cereal or milk in the house. You can also join the EDDBUD channel members scheme. You might fancy yourself as an outsole observer, a midsole masher, or an upper connoisseur. You'll gain lots of new perks so you can interact more with both myself and the viewers of the channel. That unicorn shoe is one that we all search for. Enough cushion to lessen the blow, but not so much added ballast that it rules out using it as a race shoe. Since Nike began experimenting with Pebax foams in the Vaporfly 4% line, we've seen many different implementations of that material, with varying degrees of success. That Vaporfly 4% midsole was a little bit too fragile. It fractured and tore quite badly in the heel for some people. I remember one chap wearing it like on a 10-mile run and he'd already like worn away part of the shoe. Let's not even mention those rubber pods. You know the ones I'm talking about. I mean, in fairness, these have got like 180 miles in them or something. I still feel really nice. The Pegasus Turbo line was a winner for some, but Nike saw loads of returns on that shoe. I think it was a little bit down to how React and ZOOMX weren't really great bedfellows. They didn't play ball together that well, and there were some separation issues. The Tempo Next Percent, the Alphafly Next Percent, they were strange mixtures of high-pressured AirPods in the front and then softer foam in the rear. And the Next Percent pretty much just had things spot on, really. The Invincible run saw Nike throwing a ZOOMX sink at it with a really nice plush upper design that didn't give you any blisters. So where does the Streakfly fit into all of this? Where does it originate from? What came before it? And how does it fill a gap that Nike have had in their running shoe lineup for several years? Back in 2006, 2007, people were wearing shoes that were completely unlike what we see now in races. The Streak 7 was a really popular model. There were some other even lighter versions of the Streak as well. Similar upper intentions here, but with more modern materials. I think everybody's just trying to save a little weight here and there, aren't they? Looking at the proposed weights of the Streakfly, it seems like it could be just above 200 grams in my size. It seems like the Streakfly, in at least the sample sizes, will be about 17 grams lighter than the Next Percent. That's in a typical men's size 9. So it does mean it has a chance of being perhaps just above 200 grams for me in my UK size 11. The Next Percent for me was about 226 grams, if my memory serves me correctly. And looking at other weight offsets of several other shoes, I think that's where we could be at. I'm going to go 205 grams as a guess. We'll see. So that's about 7.2 ounces. That will still make it one of the lightest Nike shoes out there. Certainly for running anyway. It will be almost like there's nothing there on the terminal segments of my free lower limbs. There's a viewer recently said to me that weight isn't everything, and I do have to agree, but it's quite interesting to have a look sometimes. It does look like the Streakfly will come in about an ounce lighter than even two of the lightest shoes I've got. That'll be the Streak 7 and the trusty old Vaporfly 4% Flyknit. Let's not forget the Vaporfly Next Percent original version too. That just had a few grams on both of those others. Looking at the Streak 7 profile, it's not all that far off the Streakfly, is it? Midsole stacks really have changed massively though over the last few years. A few years back, like 26mm in the heel was considered minimal. That's what we got here, 26mm in the Streak 7. There was the Adios 4 from Adidas, which had 27mm in the heel. If you look at the stack heights now, those are probably considered very minimalist. The Streakfly's got a whopping 32mm in the heel, so I don't really think we can call it minimalist in the slightest, can we? Don't forget, the Streakfly is made up of a far more compressive foam than we found in the Streak 7, which was Phylon. Much more rebound to this stuff, it's certainly firmer, perhaps a little more responsive. You all know the stuff that was in this shoe. I mean, still to this day looks amazing to me. The Adios 4 and the Streak 7 were all known for a slightly more responsive feel, less assistive perhaps, though let's not get away from this, guys. Both featured their own assistive tech. The Streak 7 had an airbag in the heel and of course that Pebax shank plate through the midfoot, and the Adidas shoe had a sneaky torsion plate underneath along with a small slither of boost. I think one really interesting choice here from Nike is not to make a big hoo-ha out of the fact that this has some sort of shank plate in the midsole. Normally Nike will like cut out some of the foam, make some window or something, make it very obvious with some paint or something on the midsole as to where the shank plate might be. I'm wondering if this shank plate is like an embedded type assistive element, or it's going to be encapsulated within the midsole foam. Every other shoe that Nike have released that have got some sort of plate inside it, especially with ZOOMX, has got several different pieces to the midsole. I don't think that that is the case this time. As I mentioned, recently that's meant 2 segments of foam that have been sandwiched together with the other element. Doesn't look like the case here and really isn't far off the design of the Streak 7. I do see some other design hits here from the next percent too, with that toe box reinforcement around the front of the shoe. And I think the Rival Fly 3 as well, with that smaller segment of padding on the tongue. The heel has similar padding that we've seen in the next percent and the Alpha Fly series. And I think the whole profile of the shoe here is very close to the Pegasus Turbo. Remember that one? I guess it was only a matter of time that Nike had to go backwards really in terms of the midsole stack height. And I think part of the reason that they're pushing this shoe quite heavily, this big hype on this one, is because lots of runners that are kind of really into it have already bought the next percent. Is there really anyone else to sell it to? Have they reached a point where people have got enough pairs, haven't really been able to use them, I suppose, because there haven't been as many races where you might get them on foot? There's no one left to sell them to. Perhaps that explains why there's loads of pairs of them sat on their online stores. You can get pretty much any pair you like. Now you can just lay your hands on them whenever you want. A new lower stack shoe with less materials. Essentially a race flat update of the cheaper Streak 7, which, let's not forget, released at a retail price of 95 Earth credits. This one's going to be a bit more, 135 Earth credits. Are you getting any more, any less? I'm not entirely sure. I'll leave that up to you. It's certainly a more attractive and competitive price than the Adidas Takumi Sen 8. It makes that shoe look extremely expensive now, doesn't it? This could be a very light, potentially very usable and versatile shoe. Though I've got to be honest, after a recent speed session in the Streak 7 to kind of refresh my memory on the shoe, I didn't find that P-back plate anywhere near as rigid as I remember it. I mean, look at it bend. There's not an awful lot of rigidity there at all. So just a few thoughts that are floating around my mind at present. Looks as if this one's going to launch very soon. I think there was talk of it even maybe next week in Europe. I think it's a little bit later in the US. I'd love to get a pair of these when they do release, hopefully in the prototype colorway. They can go with my Nike Next Percent 2s. I also picked up in the same colourway early last year. Are you hyped for this release, or does it lack some of the attributes that you seek for a 5 or 10k race? Perhaps you're thinking of picking it up to utilise in your training as part of your running shoe rotation. Let me know your thoughts and opinions, my valued viewers, down in the comments. I've been going back through some of the Nike race shoes recently just to refresh my mind really, and today utilise this old friend on a 5k test. Came in about 20 minutes and 10 seconds, so I'm really actually pleased with that considering the injury last year, the speed slowly coming back, and I think it's a psychological sort of barrier. I'm getting close to breaking through that, which is good. These felt great, I've got to be honest. Just approaching about 100 miles in them now. You'd assume that the foam's hardened up a bit over the years, but actually it felt wonderful. Really nice and responsive. Hitting that forefoot, it just felt great. Still pretty rigid, no problems with fit or anything. Yeah, does make you wonder, did they have the blueprint just right in the first place? Quite possibly. A new feature for you on the channel, guys. I'm going to have a comment of the day. You know, I like to trawl through the comments. Sometimes people really make me chuckle. Other times they've got a really interesting question or discussion starter. So Josh Tiffin has commented today. He says, with more and more shoes gradually copying the Nike Invincible trend, I wonder at what point Nike decide to finally confirm a Nike Invincible 2 to try and extend that gap back to its competitors. Now, I do recall seeing that there was a Invincible Run 2 with a slightly different upper. Seems like the same midsole, which is great news for me. I think the upper was the thing that they could improve upon quite a bit. Just a bit less bulk to it would have been good. We still want some padding, yes, we still want it to be plush, but a little less bulk would be very welcome. It does seem like Nike have started a bit of a trend though. Super squashy cushioned foam and wrap a very plush upper around it. Maybe a couple of stability nods in there and you've pretty much got that invincible run, haven't you? So I can only see them trying to improve that upper, and I'm sure they got something else on the horizon. Just runs for you, perhaps got a small engine in the back. Hope that answers your question anyway. A quick musical interlude for you. Now, yesterday I ended up watching a really long YouTube video with Neil Young and Crazy Horse, their album Barn. It was kind of this documentary, I suppose, of how they came up with the album. Loads of footage from in between takes, loads of larking around, some good old boy fun on there. It did make me appreciate the album a little bit more. I had tried to listen to it a few times while I was out running, while I was just out walking around, and I didn't really connect with it. But actually watching how they recorded it, where it was recorded, it had a massive effect on my appreciation of the songs. Song of the Seasons, for example, was just really natural sounding track, and Heading West has some really woody guitar tones, nicely distorted. It all just seems to make a little bit more sense if you watch the songs in the environment they were recorded. It's the same for the track Human Race, the lyrics, the grungy guitars. They just seem to have a bit more impact when you can see Neil delivering them. Go and check it out, guys. It seems to be free to watch. It's about an hour or so long. It really is worth it. Neil Young and Crazy Horse with the making of Barn. I'd love to have a barn like that with loads of amplifiers set up out in the middle of nowhere somewhere you can make loads of noise. That would be absolutely fantastic. Maybe I can aspire to be like that. I mean, I've already got the plaid shirt, so I'm halfway there. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of today's video, guys. It is always appreciated. If you haven't done so already, help the channel out by clicking the subscribe button and also the bell below for notifications when we roll them out for you. Help lift up the channel to the toppermost of the poppermost by giving it a thumbs up like, but also sharing this video with your running buddies. Don't forget to become a member too. My name's Ed Bud, and I'll be seeing you